G'day. How are we all? Well, it happened again. Didn't I say at the beginning of my last live, just a couple of hours ago, that the light and the weather was very unpredictable. Oh, back again. The light is very unpredictable. When I started the live, it was raining and it was quite cool inside my conservatory. And then as I was reading Great Expectations, chapter 40, the sun came out and the greenhouse effect literally took place, and my poor phone shut down again mid-chapter. It fizzled out on me. So I have returned to read from where I left off, or rather from where the phone decided to conk out. So I do apologise for our rather premature end before we reach the climax, as it were, but I have returned to finish off the chapter, which I shall in just one moment. I do thank everyone who tuned in, and I will take this opportunity to remind everyone that on my channel here there is a playlist called Reading Aloud, and on that playlist you can find 40 chapters of Great Expectations as read by me, with various tangents and underlying commentary over the last 3 years. And occasionally I read poetry and that sort of thing, and the Reading Aloud playlist. And there are also other playlists for comedy. I do sketch comedy, I do stand-up comedy, I do lots of body positive advocacy because I am a sufferer of lipedema. So as a woman of certain age, une femme de la certain âge, and of a certain figure, I'm reclaiming my space as a lipedema sufferer. This is like I'm emancipated from the male gaze, in that you're welcome to gaze upon me, but please don't tell me what to do or what to wear, because I shan't pay the slightest bit of attention, but by all means, feast your eyes. And for those who are here for the literature, I thank you all very, very much for listening. Now, shall we? I think we shall. I just checked the live video from before, when we were overcome, had a hot flush, as it were, ended just as Pip went to meet with Mr. Jaggers to discreetly inquire of him if the convict Magwitch, who has suddenly returned, is indeed his only beneficiary and the reason for his great expectations. So the chapter is called I Consult Mr. Jaggers, and I shall start from just before my phone fizzled out. Now, if you're sitting comfortably, then I shall begin once more. I have been informed by Wemmick, pursued Mr. Jaggers, still looking hard at me, that he has received a letter under date Portsmouth from a colonist of the name of Purvis, or Provis, I suggested. Or Provis. Thank you, Pip. Perhaps it is Provis. Perhaps you know it's Provis. Yes, said I. You know it's Provis. A letter, under date Portsmouth, from a colonist of the name of Provis, asking for the particulars of your address on behalf of Magwitch. Wemmick sent him the particulars, I understand, by return of post. Probably it is through Provis that you have received the explanation of Magwitch in New South Wales? It came through Provis, I replied. Good day, Pip, said Mr. Jaggers, offering his hand. Glad to have seen you. In writing by post to Magwitch in New South Wales, or in communicating with him through Provis, have the goodness to mention that the particulars and vouchers of our long account shall be sent to you, together with the balance, for there is still a balance remaining. "Good day, Pip." We shook hands and looked hard at me as long as he could see me. I turned at the door, and he was still looking hard at me, while the two vile casts on the shelf seemed to be trying to get their eyelids open and to force out of their swollen throats, "Oh, what a man he is!" Wemmick was out, and though he had been at his desk, he could have done nothing for me. I went straight back to the temple, where I found the terrible Provost drinking rum and water and smoking negro head in safety. Next day the clothes I had ordered all came home, and he put them on. Whatever he put on became him less, it dismally seemed to me, than what he had worn before. To my thinking there was something in him that made it hopeless to attempt to disguise him. The more I dressed him, and the better I dressed him, the more he looked like the slouching fugitive on the marshes. This effect on my anxious fancy was partly referable, no doubt, to his old face and manner growing more familiar to me. But I believed, too, that he dragged one of his legs as if there was still a weight of iron on it, and that from head to foot there was convict in the very grain of the man. The influences of his solitary hut life were upon him besides, and gave him a savage air that no dress could tame. Added to these were the influence of his subsequent branded life among men, and crowning all, his consciousness that he was dodging and hiding now. In all his ways of sitting and standing and eating and drinking, of brooding about in a high-shouldered, reluctant style, of taking out his great horn-handled jackknife and wiping it on his legs and cutting his food, of lifting light glasses and cups to his lips as if they were clumsy pannikins, of chopping a wedge off his bread and soaking up with it the last fragments of gravy round and round his plate as if to make the most of an allowance, and then drying his fingers on it and then swallowing it. In these ways and 1,000 other small nameless instances arising every minute in the day, there was prisoner, felon, bondsman, plain as plain could be. It had been his own idea to wear that touch of powder, and I conceded the powder after overcoming the shorts. But I can compare the effect of it, when on, to nothing but the probable effect of rouge upon the dead. So awful was the manner in which everything in him, that it was most desirable to repress, started through that thin layer of pretence, and seemed to come blazing out at the crown of his head. It was abandoned as soon as tried, and he wore his grizzled hair cut short. Word cannot tell what a sense I had at the same time of the dreadful mystery that he was to me. When he fell asleep of an evening with his knotted hands clenching the sides of the easy-chair, and his bald head tattooed with deep wrinkles falling forward on his breast, I would sit and look at him, wondering what he had done, and loading him with all the crimes in the calendar, until the impulse was powerful on me to start up and fly from him. Every hour so increased my abhorrence of him that I even think I might have yielded to this impulse in the first agonies of being so haunted, notwithstanding all he had done for me and the risk he ran, but for the knowledge that Herbert must soon come back. Once I actually did start out of bed in the night and begin to dress myself in my worst clothes, hurriedly intending to leave him there with everything else I possessed and enlist for India as a private soldier. I doubt if a ghost could have been more terrible to me, up in those lonely rooms in the long evenings and long nights, with the wind and the rain always rushing by. A ghost could not have been taken and hanged on my account, and the consideration that he could be, and the dread that he would be, were no small addition to my horrors. When he was not asleep, or playing a complicated kind of patience with a ragged pack of cards of his own, a game that I never saw before or since, and in which he recorded his winnings, sticking his jackknife into the table, when he was not engaged in either of those pursuits, he would ask me to read to him, "Foreign language, dear boy." While I complied, he, not comprehending a single word, would stand before the fire surveying me with an air of an exhibitor, and I would see him, between the fingers of the hand with which I shaded my face, appealing in dumb show to the furniture to take notice of my proficiency. The imaginary student pursued by the misshapen creature he had impiously made was not more wretched than I, pursued by the creature who had made me, and recoiling from him with a stronger repulsion the more he admired me and the fonder he was of me. This is written of, I am sensible, as if it had lasted a year. It lasted about 5 days. Expecting Herbert all the time, I dared not go out, except when I took Provis for an airing after dark. At length, one evening when dinner was over and I had dropped into a slumber quite worn out, for my nights had been agitated and my rest broken by fearful dreams, I was roused by the welcome footstep on the staircase. Provis, who had been asleep too, staggered up at the noise I made, and in an instant I saw his jackknife shining in his hand. "Quiet! It's Herbert," I said, and Herbert came bursting in with the airy freshness of 600 miles of France upon him. "Handel, my dear fellow, how are you? And again, how are you? And again, how are you? I seem to have been gone a 12-month. Why, so I must have been, for you have grown quite thin and pale. Handel, my... Hello! I beg your pardon." He was stopped in his running on and in his shaking hands with me by seeing Provis. Provis, regarding him with a fixed attention, was slowly putting up his jackknife and groping in another pocket for something else. "Herbert, my dear friend," said I, shutting the double doors while Herbert stood staring and wondering, "something very strange has happened. This is a visitor of mine." "It's all right, dear boy," said Provis, coming forward with his little clasped black book, and then addressing himself to Herbert. "Take it in your right hand. Lord strike you dead on the spot if you ever split in any way somever. Kiss it." "Do so as he wishes it," I said to Herbert. So Herbert, looking at me with a friendly uneasiness and amazement, complied, and Provis, immediately shaking hands with him, said, "Now you're on your oath, you know. I never believe me on mine if Pitt shan't make a gentleman on you." And that was the end of chapter 40 of Great Expectations. Oops, daisy. Oop. Sorry, it just fell off. So I do thank you all for tuning in to listen to me read. I will take this opportunity to remind you all, once again, I'm very, very appreciative of everyone who joins the channel as a member and everyone who subscribes and shares and likes and comments and that sort of thing. It helps me a great deal, and it helps with the algorithm especially. What else? Was there something else I was going to tell you? Oh, yes. Have you ever heard of that old joke about how you pick your drag name? You know, your drag name or your exotic dancer name. It's by taking the name of your first pet and the name of the first street that you ever lived on, and you put them together, and that way you come up with your glamorous drag name, or the name you might go by if you're on one of those sites such as, the OF, that sort of thing. Well, my drag name, as it were, or my performer name, is after my first kitten. Her name was Smokey, and I smoke, of course. And the first street I ever lived on was Emerald Street. So my performer name, my alternative performer name in the adult industry, would be Smokey Emerald. Isn't that the fabulous name? I got very lucky there, didn't I? Now, if you were to look for Smokey Emerald on any of those platforms, well, you never know your luck, do you? But until then, please do continue watching my YouTube videos and share me wide and far. I benefit greatly from your WhatsApp groups. All right, that's it. I will be down in Limerick on the 15th of September performing stand-up comedy. So if you're around, do drop in. And, you can buy me a pint and I can say g'day. See you when you got nothing on.